So you might be looking at this and be thinking, Gator, what is the SCU? Well, to answer that question, the SCU, or the Steve Cinematic Universe, was a Minecraft roleplay series made by Favremysabre. It was made to be a reboot of the Steve saga, which if you have any memory of the continuity of that series, then you would know that a reboot is just what it needed. So right now you might be wondering, Gator, how are you going to do this? The SCU is made up of 3 whole shows, those of which being Rainbow Quest, Steve Legends, and Twisted Rainbow. Well, you see, I'm doing this the same way I did my X-Men movie video, where I'm going to be covering all 3 in this video. Oh boy, this is going to be a long one. Honestly, this is a pretty good season 1. We get a good sense of the stakes with both the darkness and the prophecy of Rainbow Steve. And I think Sabre did a really good job showing off all the different types of Steves. The red Steves are mostly about wisdom and are extinct. Orange Steves are the main type we see and also are mostly for creativity. Yellow Steves represent energy. Green Steves stand for health. The blue Steves, they're in charge of the spirit realm. The indigo Steves represent connections, and the violet Steves represent love. There are 4 main villains in this season, those being Nightmare Steve, the Darkness, if you want to count that as a character, Dark Steve, and Rainbow Red. And honestly, out of all of them, my favorite one is Rainbow Red. He was a red Steve from way back in the past who has slowly been going insane from the darkness, causing him to believe that he needs to be the next Rainbow Steve. And I mean, it's always the red ones who want to be the special important guy. Now listen, a villain can only be as good as the hero of the story. And for this season, we have Sabre, Orange Steve, and Light Steve, though he's technically towards more the middle. Sabre is kind of weak in this season, as a character that is, not like strength-wise. Most of his dialogue is like unfunny jokes. I really did enjoy Orange Steve though. He's pretty cool. And it also turns out that he isn't a Steve, but instead half of the orange crystal that split off to turn into a person because of how creative it was. Honestly, I am kind of struggling with what to say about this season, considering the fact that it's the first season of a 7-season series. And I'm not going to put a review number on each season, because that's just stupid. So I guess we should just get on with the next season. Oh, in the finale to the last season, we saw Orange Steve becoming the new Rainbow Steve. And for some reason, he has to hide that from everyone. I don't know why he had to do this, but it only lasts for like 2, maybe 4 episodes at max. But anyways, we get a lot more screen time from Light Steve, which is great since he's up there as one of my favorite characters from this series. And we also got a really good episode with Dark Steve. It's 9 minutes long. There's no fighting, just him and Sabre talking to each other and having a debate about if Dark can be good or if he's just destined to be evil. I mean, Dark Steve does end up teaming with Reverse Steve, who was originally Rainbow Red, but you can tell that he doesn't really want to. The main villains of this season are still the Darkness, Nightmare Steve, Dark Steve, Reverse Steve, and Faceless. Which, speaking of Faceless, Sabre kinda nerfed him? Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but in the Steve saga, I'm pretty sure the main reason why he was a threat was because he could look like anyone and take their powers. But in this, he only has the ability to look like someone. So if he's in a situation where he has to use his powers, he's done for. And that's not even a hypothetical, that is exactly what happens. At the Orange Steve village, Sabre forces him to use his powers, and he can't, because he doesn't have any, and they destroy him. Which, I mean, it's whatever, he's here to be a minor antagonist, and to do some foreshadowing for the next rest of the series. But anywho, Reverse Steve and Dark Steve end up fusing together and make Chaos Steve. So Sabre, Light, and Rainbow Steve have to stop him, and this leads to Light and Rainbow fusing together to make Ultra Steve. But in all honesty, I hate this part of the season. Okay, hate is a strong word. there is another season that I really do not like, and you'll find out when I get there. But in all seriousness though, when I was watching this, when I got to the Reverse Steve and Dark Steve fusing, there was a point where I had to pause the series and just say out loud, what is going on anymore? Because Chaos Steve gets lured into a trap by Rainbow, Light, and Sabre, and for some reason, he doesn't try to destroy them. He sees llamas and says, oh, you think I'm so evil? Well, watch this. And just chooses to kill the llamas. Dude, what is your goal here? I mean, I can't stay mad at this part because it does lead to a really good episode where Chaos Steve gets split back into Reverse and Dark Steve. Reverse gets taken in to an Orange Steve prison, and before the same happens to Dark Steve, he asks to be destroyed and to put back into the Yellow and Orange Steves that he absorbed, so he wouldn't be able to harm anyone. But anyways, we do get introduced to Galaxy Steve, who is actually the GOAT, and he is genuinely funny. And he's probably the strongest character we've had up until this point in the series. And the season finale is pretty good. We have Galaxy Steve destroying Nightmare Steve, and we see someone run out of the portal into the overworld. But yeah, this season was pretty good, and it was a vast improvement over season 1. But let's see if season 3 can up the ante even more.
Take this and use it, Sabre. Don't you want to save everybody? Use it, and you will. And if you'll need me, I'll be in your shadow, watching over you until the end of time.
Okay, so you remember when I said Faceless was mostly used for foreshadowing? Well, before he was destroyed, he turned himself into Void Steve, who was a Blue Steve and the first Rainbow Steve. He had created the darkness himself as he couldn't live up to what the hero should be. And the literal first thing that he does is kill Galaxy Steve, though in his place we receive Time Steve and Elemental Steve, who are probably the best characters in this series. But to show how dangerous Void Steve is and how dangerous the darkness is under him, he can infect the middle world and spirit world, which leads to 2 new antagonists being brought in, Soul and Corruption, with the latter being an Indigo Steve and the former being a Blue Steve. And something I forgot to say about last season was that the Rainbow Hub, the place where Sabre and Orange, well, now Rainbow Steve, lived and was their main base in operation, it was completely destroyed by Chaos Steve. So a few episodes into this, Rainbow Steve builds a new one. And now might be good as time as any to talk about how amazing the sets are in this show. They are all phenomenal. Even if they weren't creative, which they no doubt were, they still look amazing. And it would take me months of playing non-stop to even be able to build something like this. I mean, just look at this place. Imagine how long it took to build. Also, in lore, I genuinely wonder who made this. Like, why is it abandoned? What's up with that? But anyways, this season really brings it up with pretty much everybody falling to the darkness. So the first half of this season is Sabre, Rainbow, Elemental, and Time Steve going through all the different kingdoms trying to find survivors due to the darkness becoming stronger and spreading faster than ever. And it gets worse once the gang gets to the Violet Kingdom. The reason why I say it gets worse once they get to that kingdom is because once they get there, an infected Violet Steve comes over to them and says this.
Rainbow Steve, you were supposed to save us all! Rainbow Steve,
I'm trying.
Rainbow Steve, can you help him somehow?
I don't know.
Look, man, you failed! Rainbow Steve,
No.
come on! Look,
No.
man, we have to go, okay? Just don't listen to him, okay? He's just upset because the darkness got to him, but we can fix all this still, man. Please, just get to the center.
No.
Just look at us.
And that causes Rainbow to lose confidence in himself as the hero. And this ends up with him joining Void as one of his lackeys. And this leads up to what is probably my favorite episode. It's the time loop one, and the main reason why it's one of my favorites is because it really reminds me of the time loop from Steve's Saga, and that was just a good episode. But other than that, it's just a fun episode, and it sheds some light on Sabre's older series. And the mid-season finale is actually kind of fire. Rainbow Steve ends up corrupting himself, trying to turn himself back into Orange Steve. And so a few episodes after that, he fuses with Void, creating Rainbow Void, who, with the help of Soul and Corruption, managed to infect Sabre with the darkness. And that leads to what is probably my favorite part of the show. For the entire second half of this season, Sabre has this second identity called Shadow Sabre, which is his personal embodiment of the darkness. And honestly, he's my favorite villain of this series, which I mean, rivaled only by Dark Steve and Rainbow Red. Basically, what happened was that after Sabre had been infected, 2 months passed where he had done nothing but kill tons of Steves. So for the remainder of this season, Sabre has both been trying to stop Rainbow Void and prove to everyone that he isn't actually evil. And the main reason why I like this is because I really like it when the main threat isn't something external for the hero to just beat up and not think much about, but I honestly prefer when the main threat for a hero is something personal, like an alternative personality that wants to destroy everything. And Shadow Sabre fills that nicely. This season ends with Sabre destroying Rainbow Void by taking some of the power of the darkness. And after doing so, he receives the Rainbow Crystal, which is the condensed version of all 7 of the crystals. So using this new crystal, he and Elemental Steve travel to all the Fallen Kingdoms in order to cure all of the remaining Steves, and to bring them to the new kingdom, the Rainbow Kingdom. In my opinion, this season is really, really good and way better than the last one. Let's hope that the next season is just as good. This season was also pretty good. I know I haven't said this yet outside of the editing, but each season is labeled as an arc. Season 1 was labeled as the Crystal arc, Season 2 was the Chaos arc, 3 was the Darkness, and this one is called the Kingdom arc. Which, I mean, it is an accurate title since this season is mostly filler set in the Rainbow Kingdom. Which, I mean, I'm not necessarily opposed to the idea of having a filler season right now, considering what all happened last season. And I feel like it's only natural for us to have a little season where we get to relax and explore this new kingdom and get to catch up with our favorite characters. The main villain of this season is Soul, as in the Spanish word for sun, not like Soul as in Soul Steve, who is the leader of a new faction called the Corrected Sun. Their whole thing is that they believe that the Rainbow Kingdom is being misruled, and they're also extremely racist to the Blue and Indigo Steves. Their reason for being like that is because Soul, as in like Spirit, and Void were both Blue Steves, and that Corruption Steve was an Indigo Steve. Plus, another reason why they hate the Blue and Indigo Steves is because the connection between the Indigo Steve and Blue Steve's dimensions just completely stopped existing. They all had to migrate to the Rainbow Kingdom, causing the Orange and Yellow Steves to work at the farms more, which kinda adds to a plot hole, because around the middle of the last season, Elemental moved the Rainbow Hub down 1 trillion blocks and made an exact 1-to-1 copy of it as a decoy in case Void, Soul, Corruption, and Broken Orange tried to find them. I mean, I understand that Elemental believes that it's not his or Time's place to intervene with the outside world. But I mean, Sabre could just tell him, hey, we need you to do this for us because the Rainbow Kingdom, the place that's supposed to protect all the Steves, is kind of like not working well and we need more food. I mean, I feel like he'd be able to understand that at least. He's not completely brain dead. But despite me calling this season mostly filler, there is one really important thing from this season. That being the fact that the Red Steves are still very much alive and well. We learned this from a man called M, who turned out to be the Red King's assistant. And in my opinion, he's in my top 10 characters from this show. I don't really know why. He's just like a cool dude. The finale to this season reveals that Soul, the leader of the Corrected Sun, was actually the Yellow King's assistant. And if you ask me, this season is pretty good. I mean, not nearly as good as the last one, but it's still good. So, I mean, I guess let's move on to the next season. How bad could it possibly be? This season sucks. Okay, I'm gonna try to talk about this season. For one, I think that the start is pretty good. It opens with M trying to talk with Sabre, but the two get interrupted by Green Steve, who talks to Sabre about a village that had gone missing. Well, it turns out that the reason this entire village went missing was because of Demon Steves. And every single time Sabre tries to do something about them, they change something, which is an objectively cool idea until you realize that that's not what this season is about. This season is just another season about Void Steve, and honestly, I don't really care for him that much. His whole thing is that he just wants to be evil for the sake of being evil. Sabre tries to imply that he has this huge backstory and this huge goal, which yes, is true. I've seen Steve Legends, but none of that is successfully conveyed here. But a huge plus for me for this season is that Dark Steve and Shadow Sabre are back, and they're both really good still. Shadow Sabre has gotten stronger this season, even getting a physical form outside of Sabre's mind. But anyways, a lot of important stuff happens this season. Elemental Steve gets mad at time and kind of turns into the evil version of him that we saw in the Steve saga. Also, since Sabre brought back Dark Steve and Shadow Sabre, he has been infected by the darkness again. Though, it does seem like he can't control it right now. Also, this season introduces us to Origin Steve, who is basically God. But unfortunately, this season does see the Rainbow Crystal getting split into all 7 parts. But anyways, this season ends with Void Steve getting destroyed and Shadow Sabre being set up as a main antagonist of the next season. You know, I honestly believe that this might have been the worst season out of this entire series, and it does suck to say that because I'm enjoying this series. I just hope that the next season is better. That's all I'm gonna say. Alright, the penultimate season of this entire series, and in my opinion, it might just be the best season of the entire series. The main villain of this season is Shadow Sabre, who is, again, really good. And a large part of this season is just people talking. And another large part of it is Sabre doing self-understanding stuff. He pretty much goes through the ego death that Loki went through during Agent of Asgard, and it is so amazing to see. I know I've already said this, but I really like it when the main antagonist for a character is someone who has a personal connection to our hero. And both Shadow Sabre and Sabre's self-discovery arc do a really good job at this, though I wouldn't really call his self-discovery arc an antagonist, but you know what I mean. And I think my favorite episode of this season, and probably the whole show, is when Sabre's doing his self-discovery arc. He has to go through the 4 corners of his mind, and it is really amazing to see. And besides, we get more screen time from Origin Steve, who is actually the GOAT. I really like the fact that he's a good dude here instead of the actual insane man from Steve's saga. Also, Dark Steve is a minor antagonist for this season, and it oddly works for his personal arc of him trying to be better, but ultimately failing. In fact, this ends with him being destroyed, and I want to say that it's sad, but it is a Minecraft roleplay series, so it's not necessarily sad. But I mean, we see a man who is struggling with the fact that he was made to be a weapon and wanting to change and be better, but he ultimately keeps falling back into those ways because that's what most people expect from him. Everyone expects Dark Steve to be the embodiment of evil, and he doesn't want to be that, but he ultimately proves everyone right, and that is objectively sad. This season really put it into perspective for me why I did not like Void all that much, and that is because we don't know much about him. I mean, we do learn more about him in Steve Legends, and he's a really good character in that, but he's not good here, especially when he has the competition of Shadow Sabre and Dark Steve. I also really like that Time Steve is a main character in this season. I don't believe I talked about him much, but he is consistently one of the funnier and well-written characters of this show. He's just the biggest ride or die for Sabre. While yes, this season does have Shadow Sabre and Dark Steve as the main villains, this season also chooses to build up the first curse to be the main villain of the next one, and Elemental as a minor antagonist. Plus, the end of this season introduces my GOAT Hypno Steve. This season was a great improvement from the last one, and probably number one if I had to rank all of these seasons. So let's see if the last season is just as good, if not better.
A hero's journey, rises and falls, their quest for the light in which the rainbow calls. My journey cannot end, not until I face that of which is unbreakable.
Yeah, you already know that this final season is a banger. Originally, while I was watching it, I kept thinking in the back of my head, man, we do not need the first curse as the main villain, because we have both Elemental and Hypno. But Hypno is really only there to mess with Sabre, so that would only leave Elemental as the main villain, which in my opinion wouldn't work for an entire season. So yeah, the first curse was a pretty good choice to be the main antagonist for this season. It also does make sense that the last boss fight that Sabre would have to fight would be a guy who has existed since the beginning of time. Plus, he's a pretty good villain. He's way better than Void, at least. And I really like how Elemental's story is handled. His story ends up with his death, which genuinely sucks, because as I've said before, I really liked how he was written, and I was genuinely wishing that he would realize the error of his ways and rejoin Sabre and his little gang. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. And his death leads Time to be on his own for a majority of this season. But anyways, this season is actually pretty funny. There's this one scene where Sabre, Time, and the first curse are just stuck in an elevator together, and it is so awkward to the point that it is genuinely funny.
Did it work? So, I guess it's still kind of a nice day out, huh? How's your life been? Not bad. Just, trying to save the world and all that. So, the elevator almost up? This thing's taking longer than usual. Yeah, I mean, like first curse. Oh, you're asking him. Oh, yeah, okay.
I hate you.
Well, now that's just rude. Yeah, locked up for what? Dawn of Time? Yeah. Cool. Yep, that's cool. It's cool. I guess it's interesting. He's got an interesting life, so that's that. All right. So, cool backstory, clear character motives. Yeah, I'd say so, Time. I mean, I guess. I don't really know what his motives fully are. I mean, I don't really know how he became this. How long is this elevator? Are we there yet? Hello? This is taking so long. Are we good? You didn't even hit the button, man? Whatever. Maybe it's broken.
Destroy you!
Run! Okay.
Plus, there's a new side character named Assistant Steve, and literally every other line of his is comedy gold. He literally mostly makes fun of Sabre and everyone else, and it is funny. I also really enjoyed Sabre this season. You can tell that he's fully grown into the role of being this world's hero. He's grown so much from season 1 to now, to the point where he's able and willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, giving up his own existence so that everyone who was hurt by the first curse could come back. And this also means that he is the strongest character in the entire series, because he created Origin Steve. He created God. I also really like the fact that Light Steve becomes the 4th and final Rainbow Steve. I also think his design is pretty good. He has lighter, more pastel colors, since he is also the embodiment of light. Honestly, I was not expecting to enjoy Rainbow Quest as much as I did. This show gets an 8 out of 10. And if you're wondering how I would rank all the seasons, this is how. Well, now that that's out of the way, we still have 2 more shows to get through. And thankfully, they aren't nearly as long. Let's see what Steve Legends has in store, shall we? This show is actually good. This series is a prequel to Rainbow Quest and tells the story of Cole and Seer. Seer is a blue Steve who we meet in Season 2, and Cole is a red Steve who is the main character of the entire series. This season starts with a group of red Steves called the Elites, which consists of Cole, Beef, and Sharp. The 3 of them are tasked with exploring the world outside the Red Kingdom for expansion. This leads to Cole finding tons of other Steves. In fact, we get introduced to a ton of new Steves in this season. Desert Steves, Ocean Steves, Forest Steves, Winter Steves, and Obsidian Steves. These characters are all new and they're all exclusive to this series, which, is a shame because they're all pretty cool. And I do think that their designs are also pretty good. I also feel like it's worth mentioning that this is the only series, as far as I'm aware, that Sabre isn't the main character of. And it's a nice change of pace. Lucas, or VL Spike, is really good as Cole. He manages to capture the young, naive explorer personality of him very well. But anyways, Cole's exploring leads him to the Desert Steve village, which leads him to encounter the Last Inferno, which is a massive dragon made of fire. This causes Cole to want to fight against the Last Inferno in order to keep all the Desert Steves safe. But that's not a terrible idea. It allows Cole to find all the other Steves that I mentioned very naturally because he's trying to get help to fight the Last Inferno. We even got to see the Ocean Steve Kingdom, which kinda looks vaguely familiar to build. Also, in lore, I genuinely wonder who made this. Why is it abandoned? What's up with that? Whatever, I can't put my finger on it right now. I do like that despite not being the main character of this series, Sabre does play a character named The Judge. And in my personal opinion, he's probably one of the coolest characters in the entire SCU. He was created by Origin Steve in order to judge people as deemed fit. We also get introduced to Genesis, and he's one of the first creations of Origin. In fact, he's the creator of the Forest Steves, Desert Steves, and Ocean Steves. And he also made the Last Inferno, which destroys most of the Forest Steves. So this leads Cole to getting the rest of the other Steves together for a last stand against the Last Inferno, which unfortunately does see one of the last 3 Forest Steves die. And also the Desert Apprentice also dies. Which, it is kind of a shame. The Desert Steve Apprentice is pretty funny. Alright, this season is good, and way better than the first season of Rainbow Quest. Though it does have a few problems of its own. I feel as though the pacing of it was just ever so slightly off. It might be because I'm watching all of it at once instead of waiting a day between each episode like how it was released. Also, this season is pretty funny. There aren't many jokes that made me guffaw in laughter, but it's still pretty good. Again, I do really like how Cole is written. He's such a good protagonist in this that it kind of makes Sabre look like not that good of a protagonist, if that makes sense. But yeah, this season ends with the Last Inferno being destroyed and all the Steves living in peace for a minute. So let's see what happens in Season 2. So, shocker to no one, I was right. Steve Legends Season 2 is way better than Season 1. This season does play into the Rainbow Quest side more than Season 1 did, because, this season introduces us to Seer, a blue Steve who was the first Rainbow Steve who ended up being Void Steve. And speaking of Seer, do you remember back in my review of Season 5 of Rainbow Quest when I said Seer was a really good character in Steve Legends? Well, once again, I was right. Seer is actually such a good character, and he's kind of tragic in a way. I mean, the poor guy had so much responsibility forced upon him. Prior to him becoming Rainbow Steve, the entire world was getting attacked by Demon Steves. So in a desperate moment, Seer had all the Chromatic Steves condense their most powerful member into crystals, which he then infused into himself to become Rainbow Steve, which led to an hour-long episode of their last stand against the Demon Steves. And that episode was really cool. I don't know why, I just know that it was. But before the Demon Steves, the main villain for this season was a man named Dread Steve. Dread Steve has the ability to make you see all of your nightmares, like all your worst dreams. Dread Steve had decided to try to infect Cole and Seer. This, however, did not work at all. Cole and Seer managed to fight off their fears. Though despite telling Cole that everything's alright, everything's fine, a little bit of his fear remained inside of him from the vision that he had received from Dread. And in that vision, he became a monster, like the most evil guy you could imagine. And despite his best efforts to not go down that path, he ends up going down it. However, this season does do a lot of new things for the SCU. One of those being that Saber got rid of the later on bit at the start of each episode, which I do appreciate. It's a little hard to explain why, but it just kind of feels like spoilers. Saber also decided not to have any title cards or intros for any of Season 2, which, sucked for me because now I'm going to have to reuse the Season 1 intro, and I don't really like doing that. But yeah, Seer isn't the only character getting character depth. Cole does too. Cole evolves so much this season that it's crazy. I mean, a little bit before, he was just a baby when he had his vision from Dread. The guy almost gave up on everything after getting that vision. But later in the same season, when Void Steve tries to do the same thing to him, he just ignores it. He's just done with all of it by now. Also, in Season 1, he could barely fight off a few spiders without using his lightning or fireballs, but now he's able to stand against gods like the Judge or Void Steve. Also, Alex is brought into this show, and she's not nearly as important here as she was in Steve Saga, though she does technically end up creating Galaxy Steve by healing the Ruin Beast. I know I already brought up the mid-season finale of The Last Stand against the Demon Steves, but a good amount of characters die here. I mean, the Obsidian Leader, Innocent Orange Steve, Desert Leader, Ocean Leader, Leroy the Yellow Steve, one of the Giants, die here. And again, it was a really good episode, and concluded the mini-arc of the first Demon Steve invasion. The finale to this series has Cole and Seer, now Void Steve, engaging in a massive final fight. And just to show how powerful Void Steve truly is, Cole has to get power-ups from Galaxy Steve, the hammer from the Judge, and all of the crystals in order to become Rainbow Steve to stand a chance against Void. Which doesn't really matter since he ends up dying. He makes a deal with Origin Steve to where he can go back to the original world, but if he dies again, that's it. He does not go to the spirit world or the world below. He's just in some purgatory place. So to mediate this, Cole has Professor Red make a clone of him, who is the first Red Steve and the first Steve that we ever see in Rainbow Quest. And during the final cinematic, we get to see what happened to some of the other characters, like how Beef was faceless in Season 2 of Rainbow Quest. Spark, a new member of the Elites, ends up being Reverse Steve. Sharp ends up being the Great Librarian. And the Elite Leader ends up becoming Ghost Steve. And Cole runs through a portal to Alex's universe, never to be seen again. I really did like Steve Legends. It was a really good series that not only stands well on its own, but also as a prequel. Also, I didn't find this out till way later, but when Saber goes through the portal at the end of Rainbow Quest, Hypno Steve follows him through. Well, there are several points in this series where you can just see Hypno Steve in the background. So, yeah, I'd say Steve Legends also gets an 8 out of 10. Let's just get to the finale of the SCU. Twisted Rainbow.
Creating horrors, but especially beauty. And it is so because it is temporary. Though through a warped lens, a ray of light can still shine. With many people, many opportunities, and many mistakes. It has been a twisted rainbow.
So, Twisted Rainbow was amazing. I'm not kidding when I say this, but it's probably the best part of the SCU. This show is very deceptive. The first episode plays out like what you come to expect from one of these. After the Rainbow Quest finale, Saber had accidentally created the multiverse. And this show is set in an alternate universe and not the one from Steve Legends and Rainbow Quest. Something I love about this series is that we start off seeing things the same way we did in Rainbow Quest. Saber being our hero, a knight in shining armor. We have a Rainbow Steve with him in the form of Twisted Rainbow, and we have the Dark Guard as our bad guy. But as the show goes on, these roles start to change. Saber ends up becoming the main villain of the series after realizing that the entire universe was made for him to exist in. Twisted gets revealed to be evil relatively early on. He was the Red Steve leader who got infected by darkness, and so Professor Red had infused the rainbow crystals into him to keep him from falling to the darkness. And the Dark Guard's leader starts to change into the hero after Saber throws him halfway across the world, where he meets a village of Yellow Steves that take him in. Something I like about the Dark Guard's leader is that in episode 13, it's revealed that he was actually Shadow Saber. And they actually changed his design here. He has more color as opposed to being black and white, which I'm not against. It helps to show that he's our new main character. I do really love how Shadow Saber and Saber are handled here. And I don't think I can word it any better than how Saber did himself.
The aspiring hero here changes from Saber to the elite, as they seem to swap positions from Mouse to Menace, and vice versa. We sympathize with the one who realizes they can be better, regardless of their past. We sympathize with the one who tried to be better, but realized it's a lost fight.
This show also had a massive jump in quality from the last two shows. I mean, like, seriously, just take a look at this. But yeah, it is because they decided to use the Blockbuster mod, as opposed to filming stuff in vanilla Minecraft, which is way better. I don't know how any of it works. I play on Bedrock. But still, I do actually believe that the ending is pretty sad. I'm not gonna say I cried, because I didn't, but man, we spent a good 18 episodes getting to know these characters, only for Saber to destroy the entire universe. I do really love the last little bit of dialogue we get between Shadow Saber and Saber.
I was blinded back then.
Yet all you needed was to listen to me!
I'm listening now.
Only because you have to.
Because I want to.
Amazing the motivation that arises from necessity.
There's still so much I've yet to learn that I've only just begun to discover.
Well, one last time, here's something for you to discover!
This fully shows how much the roles have been reversed, because earlier in this series, Shadow Saber wanted basically the same thing as normal Saber, but again, through the help of the Yellow Steves, he becomes a better person. Well, them and M. That's right, M is here. And he's kind of like tragic. First of all, the reason he's called M here is because he's just so damn miserable all the time, which is objectively funny.
Why is his name M in the first place? That's just a letter.
M stands for miserable. That's what he is all the time.
Miserable?
But second, early on in this series, we see him trying to warn Saber about Twisted and how he's actually evil, only for Twisted to get rid of his ability to talk. Which sucks, because he's actually one of the few genuinely nice and well-meaning characters in this show. I think my favorite part of the finale is that it's abrupt. While yes, that can be a problem with something like the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance, here it's a good thing. The reason why I say it's good here is because it just shows that everybody is out of time. Shadow Saber is out of time to change, Twisted is out of time to beat Saber, and Saber himself is out of time and is fully on track to being the villain. The ending cinematic here is also amazing. We see the last moments everybody has together as the universe gets destroyed around them, and we get a monologue from Origin Steve. The entire thing is set to When Will Tomorrow Come by Ian Luxton, which is an amazing song that I've been listening to non-stop since I first heard it here. It's also what I used for the intro of this segment. Something else I really do love is that this is the end of the SCU, and it's a really strong finale, and it'll probably stick with me both as a writer and a viewer. If I were to find negative things to talk about, it'd probably be that one, the fights, while better than in Rainbow Quest or Steve Legends, look a little bit off. But I mean, it is excusable because this is the first time Saber and his team ever really used the Blockbuster mod. The other thing being that the first curse is back. In this show, he's the one who ultimately pushes Saber into becoming a full-on villain. In the penultimate episode of the entire series, we see that he has access to the crossroads of the multiverse, and he is not seen at all after. While yes, someone could make a point that it would be a good thing to see what he does, that's not what this show or the entire SCU is about. And Saber himself said that.
While, of course, it would be entertaining to show where the first curse went and what he wants to do, that was never what the series was meant to be about. This is the story of someone who tried to save, but couldn't save themselves.
So, yeah, Twisted Rainbow gets a 9 out of 10. I really recommend all of you watch it. And with that, I'm done. The SCU, while flawed, is really good. Honestly, I have nothing but respect for Saber. This isn't the only thing that he's made. Right now, he's currently making a series called Alex Rising, which, I could make a video on if the demand is high enough, and if that finale episode ever comes out. But with all that being said, I have a few video ideas for the next one, and all those will be on a community post once this video is live, so go vote on that after you watch this. So I guess I'll just see you guys next time.